Hi there, it's Florence coming to you again from Oshawa, giving you an audio commentary on my painting of Perry Young, who plays Father June on the Warrior TV series, which was written by Bruce Lee, is produced by his daughter, as well as director Jason Lin. It's a 2-season series so far, and I highly recommend it. At this stage, in the portrait, I decided to just use some graphite sticks to get all of the main landmarks down on a bit of MDF board. So I'm using a fully graphite pencil, as well as a broader graphite stick. I believe they're 2B and 4B. And I just use them to really broadly and quickly block in a lot of my silhouette overall. And then I jumped right into adding some acrylic medium to start blocking off any sort of paint from getting absorbed by the board. So it took 2 thick layers to make this happen. And it did take quite a bit for it to dry. But once that was done, I put together a thin wash of golden heavy flow acrylics Raw Umber, as well as Createx Opaque Blue. And I brushed that into the shadow areas to just establish all of my dark areas, both in the background as well as the overall silhouette of the character. And then also started blending in the shadows on his skin, because this is going to be quite a high contrast subject. I then also started putting together my palette. So this was a combination of French Ultramarine, Viridian, Raw Umber, Burnt Sienna, Alizarin Crimson, Titanium White, Cadmium Yellow Medium, and Cadmium Yellow Pale. And I started to just block in a lot of the darker skin tones with a combination of Viridian Green and Burnt Sienna. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to maintain the deep teal grading that the series had chosen for this shot. And I knew it was going to push me out of my comfort zone, because a lot of the palette that I had been using beforehand in previous weeks was very much more tied to conventional lighting. But I've been wanting to push my palette a bunch, so using this particular reference as a study was a good opportunity for me to explore. I still did use quite a lot of normal skin colors on top of that, but overall I think it worked out quite well. Here you can see I'm just blocking in some very bright orange colors in the background. The final piece doesn't have this, but I felt it was going to be important to kind of establish a bit of a rim light behind Perry, just to give his character a bit more shape against the background. The light doesn't actually exist in the original reference. Well, it does, but it's not that bright. In fact, it's not turned on in this particular reference. It did help me kind of create a bit more drama, though. And here I'm just working in some of the mid-tones and kind of blending them in with the dark tones on the skin. After having added in that thin wash on the left for the background, that basically allowed me to figure out what kind of balance I needed and how dark I needed to go with the skin. And as you can tell here now, I'm also bringing that balance into the jacket, where that's a hard mix of Raw Umber and Ultramarine Blue for the dark shadows, and then adding in just a little bit of white for the diffuse lighting on the jacket itself. Having done that, I was able to go back into the background and start kind of blocking in some of the buildings in the background very, very generally. And then adding some wetness to the street as a just to show some reflection of the sky. And then there's always for a lot of this portrait, there was a lot of push and pull in terms of all of the dark and medium values, just to get the volumes right. I always try to use as large a brush as possible for these sort of situations, even though it might feel like it's too large of a brush. It just helps to economize on my mark making. And then only after feeling that like that for an extended amount of time and really feeling that I need something a bit smaller to fit in a specific area, only then do I kind of switch to a smaller brush. And usually I'm going from like an inch wide brush almost to like a half-inch wide brush. And these days I've been painting with a combination of either fill brushes or flat brushes, and usually they're just synthetics, like just cheap synthetic brushes. Here you can see I'm kind of working in a lot more of the contrasts, the detailed contrasts for the scarf and like on his skin and whatnot. And I'm also like at this point pretty far gone in terms of like covering up the midtones of the underlying board. There are still a few small remaining areas under his chin that haven't been addressed yet, which I'm addressing now. But you could see that like originally I was kind of comparing to some of the other boards that I had on hand and just figuring out, okay, well, how do I need to handle this? And then basically it was just a lot of like looking back at the piece and just figuring out what needs to be balanced out next. What do I need to work on next? And then how does that kind of propel me forward with the next thing that needs to be done? So it was really like a lot of bouncing back and forth between the skin, the jacket, and the background. Skin, the jacket, and the background. And just figuring out, okay, well, what can I make more detailed next? There was a fair amount of time here where I was reestablishing a lot more tension in his cheek and trying to push back the corner of his mouth in a little bit of a smirk. I also spent a bit more time working in like the details of his brows, his eyes, and his hair. And then also kind of, at this point, also adding a lot of the more light, diffuse skin color, just as it just catches a bit of the pale light in the foreground. And this is definitely a lot stronger than what's in the original shot, but just to kind of, I took the opportunity to bounce off the drama that the orange light was giving me, and trying to pull a bit more of the contrast out of that, and kind of have the subject kind of bounce a lot of the drama in terms of the foreground and the background lighting, the rim lighting, just to make it a little bit more interesting and have him pop off the background a bit more. Here I'm also just working in a bit more of the background, giving the street a little bit more reflection to make it more wet. And then that also gave me the opportunity to make the jacket a little bit more obvious, and just to emphasize the silhouette a bit more. I also chose this opportunity to add more contrast into the jacket, bringing in some cooler colors and also establishing the shadow in the lapel a bit stronger. I also kind of bulked up his shoulder a bit and gave the background a little bit more depth. Here I am kind of working in a little bit on his tie. And always going back into the skin and blending, reworking the volumes and making sure that they work for me. Always going back to the reference and checking what does and doesn't work, what is and isn't that dark or that light. Eventually I did slim down his cheek a bit because it's really not that full. And then I also started moving his nose over a little bit because originally it was a bit too far to the left. So here I am just reestablishing the volumes on the nose and increasing the shadow on the left of the nose as we see it to fit. So there's a fair bit of modification and reestablishment of everything, pretty much. Going back in, adding more shadows to the ear, and establishing shapes in the background and on his scarf and whatnot. But after this point in the video, basically I had stopped at around 4.5 hours. By this point I was pretty happy, but I did feel like there were a number of things that I could wait and fix in the morning. I didn't end up filming any of that in the morning, but basically what I did was to add and blend in some more volume on the skin, and then also to establish the folds of the corner of the mouth, and then add in his facial hair. And so a lot of the reworking probably took another 1.5 to 2 hours, and so far I have resisted additional work on the piece, but I will probably go back in and glaze in some more volumes on the skin, and then also glaze down the brightness on the collar of his shirt. But overall I've been pretty happy with this piece. I did feel like it was a challenge because the underlying base color was definitely something that I don't use very often. But it was a very interesting experience, and I was very happy that it received a lot of interest. And hopefully I'll be able to work on a number of other portraits very soon in the future. One more thing, I just wanted to send out a great big thank you to Perry Young for his incredible portrayal of this character, as well as his recent repost of my work to his account on Instagram. He can be reached at Perry Young Official. That's PerryYungOfficial. If you enjoy what you've seen here, please do click like, and if you'd like to see more, do click subscribe, and hopefully I'll be able to put up some more time lapses here. I do stream weekly on my Twitch channel over at twitch.tv/fccreative, and usually that is Sunday nights from 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or maybe just a little bit earlier. I don't know, I'm kind of thinking about taking it a bit earlier because sometimes getting a bit late on a Sunday night can be a bit rough for everyone. So let me know. Do drop in, let me know if the timing works for you, or if you'd like to see or following along at a different time. I'm kind of thinking about streaming midweek. But we'll see how things go depending on what my availability is. Anyhow, that's all from me today. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.